Carmen Bellows, co-founder of The Great Lesser Known, a website that illuminates lesser-known artists in Middle Tennessee. Today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Todd Saal, watercolor painter. Hello, Todd.
Hi, Carmen.
Thank you so much for taking the time speaking with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, tell me, first of all, where are you from? I know you're not from here.
No, I'm from New York, New York City, mainly Brooklyn, Queens, and in that area.
And how did you end up down here?
My wife's job it takes her back and forth between New York and Nashville, and we've been coming here for 20 some odd years, and finally decided to get away from the cold and the snow and come down here to Tennessee.
Oh, I don't blame you. And Tennessee's a great place to live.
Oh, it's great. We've had a blast. It's fun.
So tell me how you became interested in art.
Well, I've always been interested in art from even a very young age. I was always drawing. I was pretty introverted as a kid, and so I spent a lot of time drawing and just kind of making up stories, and I would use, my drawings and painting to kind of support those stories and that kind of thing. But then I just started doing other creative things, and so it all kind of bled into stuff. So it was drawing, painting, then sculpture work, and all that kind of thing, all on a very small scale. And then life happens, and we all go off and do different things, and then and then a few years, I kind of found its way back.
So is that when your career started to develop?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. I would say about 4 or 5 years ago. I wanted to start painting again. Just didn't have the time. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and he suggested, "Oh, why don't you try watercolor?" And I was just like, I tried that years ago, and I could never get it. It was just too hard, and he's like, "Yeah, but it's portable. You can take it with you. You're already doing that with your sketchbooks and things like that." So I started doing that. So the interesting thing there was all the artists and all the art that I was looking at that was really resonating with me at the time was all watercolor artists. And it was all this kind of loose, art and, being in technology where you have to control everything and all that stuff. It was such a completely the juxtaposition of the whole thing. And I'm sure that's probably why it was resonating, and I was bored. I didn't want to do this anymore. Right. So it was kind of all of that kind of thing. The more and more I looked at it, the more and more I realized it's like, I have to try this. So I tried it, and just like my previous attempt, it was horrible. So it was just bad. So I was struggling, but I kept attempting and kept going on. And so then all that stopped, trying to move out of New York and, coming down here, selling the house. There was so much going on that it just wasn't going to work. But, I fit it in where I could. When we moved down here, I was so burnt out on the tech business itself and the industry that for my health, and my wife convinced me to, let's just take a few months, get us settled. You're starting to paint a bit more. Why don't you do that, get the house settled, and we'll take it from there. She travels quite a bit. So it all kind of came to a head where I was a lot of starts, a lot of stops. And that's when things kind of changed a bit, So I built a small, plein air, rig, try to keep it simple. Even though I've been coming here for so long, there's so much here that I had not explored. I went from downtown to a friend's house and friend's house to downtown, and that's kind of all I knew. So trying to get out and explore, it was, there's so much great landscape out here as well that I was unaware of. So I spent most of my time really just driving around, which was good. But then I started painting a little bit more. Once that happened, I started painting consistently enough for a couple of months. Met a couple of other artists, while I was out painting. That helped me gain some consistency because we actually all helped each other, and that's what I love about down here.
Yes.
The artist community down here is much more vast than I actually knew, and we all help each other. So it was like the day that I didn't want to get out and paint, and my other two friends would be like, "Well, we're meeting, over here, so come and meet us. And then I would do the same thing, and it actually all helped us really, get out there more and just be more consistent and
have community.
Yeah, and have fun. I really hadn't found anybody who's doing watercolor like full time. And at this point, I was just obsessed. I can't do anything other than this. So my wife suggested, why don't you take a workshop, look at some of these people that you admire and see if they're doing workshops. So a very long story short, there is an artist out of Australia that I really admire, and one of his mentors also lived in New York. He's out in Colorado now. His name is Dan Marshall, and he was giving a workshop out here in Memphis. So quick 3-hour drive, it was a 3-day workshop, and I was like, she's like, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill you, So I value life, so I said, okay. Yeah, exactly. And so I took the workshop, and I think that's sort of the point where I would say my career started. All the stuff before it was kind of in preparation for that, even though it's all kind of part of it. And then watercolor's got a mind of its own. It's a medium that lives far beyond the brushstroke.
I like that.
It really does, because and being in the tech industry for so long and being a control freak for over 20 years, this was enlightening. The things that I took from Dan's workshop, and he's also a very avid plein air artist, so I actually started painting outdoors even more after his workshop. So when we came back, my wife and I was like, let's see where this goes. Let's take a year and just paint and see what happens. If you want to do something else, then go do something else. So I went out and painted probably about 5 or 6 days a week outside. Built myself another rig, and that was easier to walk around for a couple of miles a day and just, and paint. What was great was there was no pressure of having to sell and that kind of thing. Right. And I think the subjects that I choose to do, that helped me, because I'm painting what I want to paint, but it's at the same time, it's the stories behind those, experiences behind those things, that I think that's even what starts to resonate with people.
Yes.
What started to happen, and this was all by accident, whereas like people started asking me, where can they see my work? Can they buy my work? So then it started to get me thinking, well, if people are liking it, I'd be foolish not to, to do it. So I started selling my work, and I have a couple of things up in a friend's gallery in New York.
Great.
And that's kind of how it started in that aspect. So that was kind of the first year, and it was just get out and paint. Don't worry about anything. Get out and paint. Just try to improve. And that's... That
sounds like great advice, and I'm glad you had a lot of people pushing you to do that. It sounds like you had several key people telling you to move on to that.
Yeah, and I do look at, the people that are around me, the support that I have, and my wife in particular. She's the one who, pushes me, because, I guess we're our own worst enemies in a lot of ways.
And our worst critics.
Without a doubt. We can talk about stories about,
Yes.
I'll paint something and, of course I don't like it, and, but, art is such a subjective thing,
I agree.
But yet I've had the same experience going the other way, where I'm standing there and I'm finishing up a painting where I think it's the greatest thing I've ever done up to that point, and I'll have somebody walk by and go, eh. So it's funny.
Yeah,
it's all about what really resonates with you personally, and once I was able to kind of not take that personally anymore, then I didn't care. Because if it didn't resonate with somebody, it would resonate with somebody else. And more importantly, it just needed to resonate with me. Otherwise, if it didn't resonate with me, I don't think anybody else was really going to, get that same vibe in a sense. My friends forced me to enter a plein air competition in Knoxville, which was fun because then it rained all week. So you're painting in plein air with watercolor in the rain. The two don't really mix. But I actually won a Best Urban Scene for that week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and I learned a ton. The artists there were beyond supportive and all that stuff.
That. Speaking of supportive, my understanding is you're teaching now. You're passing on the support that you have to others.
Yeah, it's funny because like as I would see people out on the street, there, you know, those questions then have even started coming up. And, you know, so I've taught some friends and things like that. But it's gotten to the point where it's like, you know, now friends of friends are asking, you know, I would love to pass on that information. And, you know, and we ourselves learn so much from teaching. You know, they'll ask a question and I've got to really think about how I'm doing this. And so it really makes me think about, you know, how to better execute a painting, what I'm trying to get across, not let it be just, you know, subconscious. And so it's really helped me. So now I'm teaching, I'm doing more in the studio, I'm trying to get, I'm working out some deals right now on getting some space and this way we can do things not just outdoors. We can do some things indoors, especially if it does rain, you know, and things like that. So yeah, so that's been fun.
Well, it's fantastic. It sounds like you took a pivot, and it's a wonderful road you're going down. So.
It's definitely a path. You know, you see what happens in front of you, and you adapt.
I'm glad you're here in Nashville, and I'm glad you have the artist community. I'm not surprised you have a wonderful, nurturing artist community. It's fantastic.
The people here are great.
Yes.
You know, I tell people up in New York all the time. It's like, you know, the niceness of people down here is just it's infectious. You just can't help, you know, not put yourself in a good mood.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much.
Nope, thank you.